Kiddushin Daf Yomi Aleph, Soulmates, Biאה, Irusin Oisa, or nissu'in Oisa. In this Masechta of Kiddushin that we're learning, there is so much that is revealed about the principles of life, of love, of leadership. One almost wonders how one manages in life without knowing and understanding the underlying principles of Kiddushin. And today we look at the role of chuppah. What does chuppah actually do? Where does chuppah actually fit in? We know that there are different relationships that a man can have with a woman. There is a relationship of znut. If a man and a woman live together casually, that's called znut. If a man and a woman live together exclusively, but not with chuppah and kiddushin, that's called pilegesh. And if a man and a woman are married, that's called nissu'in, that's called marriage. And it's important to explain to young women who are growing up that those are the three options they have in relationships. There is no other halachik relationship. You need to decide when particularly in the modern world that we talk about, in the frum world, in the Haredi world, it isn't an issue, I hope. But in the modern world, it is an issue. And one has to educate young girls to understand when you get involved with a man, you can get involved on one of three levels. You choose. You can be his zonah, and I won't translate that, you know what it means. You can be his pilegesh, his concubine, and you can be his wife. There's no such thing as girlfriend. In halacha and Torah, there's no such thing as girlfriend. You're a zonah or a pilegesh or an Isha. That's your choice. How do you become an Isha? Through chuppah and kiddushin, or kiddushin and chuppah really. Kiddushin first and then chuppah. And we know that for kiddushin, there are three kinyanim. So to become an Isha, so as to make sure that your relationship is one of ishut and not one of znut and not one of pilegesh. What do you need to do to become an Isha? You need Kiddushin. And there are three kinyanim that affect Kiddushin, as we've learned in the beginning of Masechta Kiddushin. Kesef, shtar, and biah. It can be done with a ring, with currency under the chuppah, or not necessarily under the chuppah. It can be done with a shtar, with a document, which we learned about yesterday. And it can be done with biah, with physical intimacy. That's also a kinyan. What the Gemara is going to be looking at the moment is, assuming a man decided to be mekadesh his wife with biah. Now, in the times of the Gemara, there was a 1-year interval between kiddushin and nissu'in. Now we do them almost simultaneously. At the wedding ceremony, we do the kiddushin first, and then they read the ksubah, and if the rabbi wants to speak, that's when he speaks. And then we do the nissu'in, which is the sheva brachos. The two first brachot and the giving of the ring is the kiddushin. The sheva brachot under the chuppah is the chuppah. That's the nissu'in. What the Gemara is looking at now is a man who says, I want to be mekadesh my wife. This is not nissu'in. We're going to have our wedding in a year's time. We're going to have a real chuppah. This is just kiddushin. But I'm not going to use a ring, and I'm not going to use a shtar. I want to use biah. So he takes two witnesses and he says, I'm going to be intimate with this young lady, l'shem nissu'im. This is not casual. This is not for pilegesh. She is going to be my wife. And I want you witnesses to watch us going into this hotel room and locking the door behind us and spending a long time there. And you should be aidim to affect the kiddushin through the kinyan of biah, of physical intimacy. Ask the Gemara, okay, so they did that, not the recommended way of being mekadesh and Isha, but they did it. What is her status now? Is she a nissu'ah or is she still just an arusa? Have they skipped the nissu'in? Is there still a need for a chuppah? They've already slept together, but now they're going to go back and make a chuppah? It just doesn't seem the right kind of sequence of events. Or do we say, yeah, all he did was he was mekadesh. That act of biah, that act of physical intimacy was not their beginning their life together. That was just a technical kinyan of changing her status from a penuyah, from an unmarried girl, to an eshitish, to a married woman. That's all that did. It changed her status. But that doesn't begin their married life. Biah, nissu'in osa or irusin osa. What does biah do if you mekadesh a woman with biah? If you decide to marry a woman in the kiddushin through the kinyan of biah, does that leave her nissu'ah and you skip the chuppah? Or do you still have to do a chuppah? Nafkimina, what's the difference? There are three. The Gemara mentions three. There are others as well. Leyorsha. The husband only inherits the wife if they are nissu'im, if they've completed the marriage. If they're in that interim stage, that there's been Irusin, but there's not yet been nissu'in, he does not yet inherit her. Velitamela, if he's a kohen and she dies, if there's only been Irusin, the Kohen can't be Metame for her. Ulahafer Nedareah, and for Hafarat Nedarim, for annulling the vows as well, it makes a difference if she's an Arusa or an Asura. If you say that after their intimacy she becomes an Nissu'ah, if she were to die, he can be Metame if he's a Kohen, he can go to her funeral. If she dies, he can inherit her. What is the situation? And the Gemara doesn't reach a clear conclusion. We'll come to the halacha in a moment. Why is there this difference? Why can he only inherit her if there's been nissu'in, if they're fully married? Why can he only be metameh, go to a funeral if she dies and he's a kohen, only if there's already been chuppah? But if there's only been kiddushin, he cannot. Why? Says the Gemara in Bava Basra, Tanya she'ero zu ishto. When it uses the word she'er, when it talks about inheritance, melamed she'habal yoresh et ishto. That teaches us that there can be Yerusha. And the Rashbam says, She'ero zu ishto ki dichtiv v'hayu lebasar echad. Go back to Bereshis. When do they become one unit? They don't become one unit at the Kiddushin. The Kiddushin is just a change of a legal status, but they don't become one unit. She'er makes them one unit, and that's hayu lebasar echad. And in Yevamos, we've got, the Gemara says a similar thing about Tuma. Ishto arusa lo onen v'lo metamela. Why says Rashi v'lo metameim kohenu? If he's a kohen, he can't go to the funeral. Da'alav she'ero hakarov elavu, because she's not considered his family. You become blood related after the nissu'in. You become family after the nissu'in. After the irusin, you're not family yet. There's a legal status, a change of status, but you're not family yet. Where does that come from? Because it says Ervat achot avicha lo tegale in this parasha of Arayas. Among the other Arayas, it says you can't the sister of your father you can't have relations with she'er avicha, because she is she'er avicha. Says Targum Yonis krevat basar. They are part of the same unit. Krevat basar. They're close together intimately. That makes them like one. So what creates she'er? The making it a single unit, so that a kohen can be metameh for his wife because she's him. A baal is yoresh et ishto because she's him. What makes her him? They're living together as husband and wife, not a legal transaction of kiddushin. That's what the Gemara said. The Gemara is saying, so now, if I did a legal transaction of kiddushin by living with her intimately, where does that leave me? Nasui or arus? What is the nature of our relationship? Says the Ran, Hilkach Maktina De'eno Sala Irusin, because of, if you look at the sugya, the way the sugya goes, although there's not a clear conclusion, we paskin that it only makes an Irusin, and Abai and Rava seem to go that way, that it's Irusin. So the man decides, I'm going to be Mekadesh my wife, I'm going to be unusual. I've learned the first mission of Kiddushin. I haven't learned much else in my life, but I have learned the first mission of Kiddushin, and it says you can be Mekadesh and Isha with Biya, so that's what I'm going to do. He does that now. Is he an Arus or a Nasui? And we've got these three differences. Says the Ran, the halacha is he's only an Arus, he still has to have a chuppah. They still have to have a chuppah. Until they've had a chuppah, they're not yet together. From the Rambam, it's not 100% clear. The Maggid Mishnah believes, the Marshal and others believe that the Rambam's ambiguous. The Rambam's not concluding. The Rambam's saying it could be either way. And according to the Kesef Mishnah, the Rambam seems to be going more like the Ran and the Ramban and the Rashbo, that the Psak halacha is that what Bi'a does, if you're Mekadesh with Bi'a, all you've got is an Eirusin, you still have to have the chuppah. You still have to go through the process of chuppah. And that's really the question that we want to deal with, is what does chuppah do? Why is chuppah so important? What could it do more than Bi'a? So what's actually happened? So they've been going out for years. They know each other really well. They're now going to come, they're going to have Kiddush, and he proposes to her. She accepts the proposal. He says, so let's get married. But I want to do this in an unusual way. I want to do the Kiddushin with Bi'a. He gets his two witnesses, he goes to the hotel, he has yichud with her in the room in front of the witnesses, and he says, I'm doing this l'shem Kiddushin, I'm doing this in order to marry her. They're married. According to the halacha, as the Ran and the Rambam, according to most people, paskin, they still have to have a chuppah. Why do you still have to have a chuppah? You're living together already. What's the chuppah going to do? What is the benefit of the chuppah? Let's look at the wording of the Rambam at the bottom of the first page of the source sheet. Ha'arusa asura leba'ala midivrei sofrim kol zman shehi beveit avia. An arusa, after there's been a rusin, he's given her the ring, or he's given her a shtar, or he's even had biya with her, they still can't live together. Until after the chuppah, they may not live together. Why not? Says the Kesef Mishnah very interestingly in the top of the second page of the source sheet. You can see that that's the case from the wording of the bracha of Irusin, the bracha that the Rav says, the Masada Kiddushin says. The wording of that bracha teaches you this halacha of the Rambam. It's interesting that he brings a raya from the wording of a bracha. Ve'asar lanu et ha'arusot. כלומר, מדרבנן שגזרו על ייחוד פנויה, ואף ארוסה לא התירו עד שתיכנס לחופה, והתיר לנו את הנשואות לנו על ידי חופה וקידושין. You see from the bracha that until there's chuppah, they're not allowed to live together. But they are married in terms of kiddushin. And if they decide to have relations before nissu'in, but after irusim, we give him makot. It's a serious thing. And even if he chose to be mekadesh using the mechanism of biya, he still can't have relations with her after that. They have to have chuppah. So chuppah is important. What is so important about chuppah? So for that we go back to Bereshis. As the Rashi mentioned, the posuk of Krivat Boso, that Krivat Boso is from V'hayu lebasar echad. On Vayu lebasar echad, Rashi says on that posuk, that means that they create a child together. Vayu lebasar echad, together they create one new being, one new flesh. That's basar echad, one unit. Says the Ramban, that doesn't make any sense. If you're going to say what makes a man and a woman one is that they have a child together, then a dog and a bitch, a male and a female dog, also a basar echad, because they also have puppies together. And a cat and a female cat have kittens together. So does that make them basar echad? That it's not about the biology of having children, it's something different. What makes the difference, says the Ramban, is that animals don't have commitment and intimacy in their gender relationships. Male comes to a female, whatever he chooses, and then they separate. Since in the case of Adam, Chava was part of him, was taken from him, and he cleaved to her. And he embraced her into his bosom like part of himself. And he wanted to be always with her. Remember when we talked about kesef, lichsof, to want to be with this woman all the time. And even though that was specific to Adam and Chava because they were created from the same flesh, this drive was then put into humankind, that a man wants to be connected to a woman permanently and all the time. That's what it means, that they become one unit. They want to live as one. They want to create a family as one. They want to be together as one. That's what makes it a human connection. So then we understand what chuppah is. That chuppah is what makes it different from an animal. If a man were just to get married to a woman, were just to have two relations with a woman, even if it's exclusive, it's not a pilegesh and it's not a zonah, it's going to be for marriage. But they haven't gone through that process of setting the woman aside. What did the Rambam say? What is nissu'in? Ad sheyavo letoch beito, you've got to bring the woman into your home. Ve'yityachid ima, and be alone with her. Ve'yafrishena lo, and separate her from her family and from society and bring her into your home and, so to say, almost insulate her from the rest of the world. V'yichud zeu anikra knisa lechuppah. That's what chuppah is. That's why some people hold that when a man has a chuppah with his wife, he should own the chuppah. He should rent the space on which the chuppah is, because the Rambam says, what is a chuppah? It is to bring her letoch beito. It must be his house, it must be his place, it must be his property. And there are people who are makbid on that, to actually rent the area on which the chuppah is. For the husband rents it, the chosen rents it, so that it is, and he brings it in. What we do is, after the chuppah, we do yichud as a separate thing, but according to the Rambam, that is the whole process. But what makes this human? What the chuppah does is, it turns it from an animal relationship into a uniquely human relationship of v'hayu lebasar echad, and that's why it's shiur, and that's why there can't be Yerusha unless there's been chuppah. Unless they're properly married, there's no Yerusha, because Yerusha comes from being one. That's why the man inherits his wife, because she's one with him. Being metameh for her comes from, she's part of me. She's my close family. I can be metameh for my father, for my mother, for my brother, for my sister, also for my wife. Yes, but not just because you signed a marriage document. Not just because you gave her a ring in front of witnesses. She's one with you because you're living together as one. And not stam you living together, but you went through that process of you went through that whole process of making her yours. That creates the oneness. A soulmate is not somebody one just finds. That's how animals find soulmates. They just find somebody for a few moments, they're soulmates. And the divorce courts are filled with people who were soulmates at one point. So what happened to the soulmatehood? That's not what soulmate is. Soulmate is something you create. Soulmate is something, if one's with the right woman and has this desire to want to be with her all the time, want to be with her forever, and one goes through one is meviah letoch beito, you bring her into your home, and you mityached ima v'yafrishen alo, and you've done Kiddushin. This is after Kiddushin. You've already selected her. You've already dedicated her to yourself. You've been mekadesh her, as we learned yesterday, that you've elevated her to the level of Kiddushin, a kind of a hekdesh. You've done all that. Now there's the bonding piece. You've done the legal piece. You've done the spiritual piece. You've made her your wife. All of that's fine. But you're not one unit yet. What makes you one unit is when you bring her into your home, you create and you live intimately with her and you create a family with her, then you're one. And then all the halachot kick in. It's interesting that Rav Shach holds in Avi Ezri, Perek Gimel, Halacha Yud Gimel, Siman Yud Gimel, he holds that chuppah is not a kinyan. Other people disagree, but he holds that chuppah is not a kinyan. Chuppah is what allows the marriage to take place. It's a stage in the process. It's not that it's a chiyah. The kinyan is for Kiddushin. Kiddushin needs a kinyan. Nissu'in doesn't need a kinyan. Nissu'in needs a process described by the Rambam, which we call nissu'in, which we call chuppah, but it's so much more than that. It's actually the creation of oneness, the creation of intimacy between man and wife, making them not only soulmates, but body mates as well. And that being a soul and body mate is what altogether enables the couple then to be one. And all of these halachot, Yerusha, Tum'ah, and Hafarat Nedarim, kick in, not because there's been a kinyan, but as a consequence of there being one unit, of there being a oneness between them.